Well, good morning, Calvary. My name is Clarence Stamps, and I'm a pastoral resident here at Calvary. And I have the great opportunity to sit down and have a discussion with a really good friend and mentor of mine, Artie Lindsay. Artie Lindsay is the teaching pastor at Tabernacle Community Church here in Grand Rapids. And we're just here to discuss and talk about how God is at work in our world and our culture now, and how we can seek to be peaceable and gentle and even loving during the difficult times we find ourselves living and navigating through now. So, Artie, I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to talk and discuss. It's good to have you here today.
It's good to be here, Clarence. Thank you. And I'm grateful to Tom for the invitation to be a part of this experience.
Great. Well, I guess first and foremost, before we really kind of dive into anything, I'm just curious to know, as a person, as a ministry leader navigating through these times, how you're doing during these times. Or is that a tricky question?
It's been a challenging time, and honestly, I'm not doing okay. I'm struggling. I'm frustrated. I'm angry. I'm hurting. Just a wide range of emotions being experienced right now. And about a week ago, I shared with some friends, just saying, I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted by the reality of this happening over and over and over again, and it's challenging.
Sure.
It's been challenging.
Sure. I think everyone, for the most part, can admit that this has been extremely draining, and at times where you just have to turn off the news and just center yourself more on God and in Scripture, with everything going on, for sure. But in the brief times I have chosen to look at TV and engage in social media and just in conversation, this word like justice has been thrown around a lot. And honestly, while it's been thrown around, it's lacked context. It's lacked what the desire of that justice is. So I'm just curious to know what your view or what your definition of justice is in light of what's going on now.
It's great. As I think about justice, I look at justice from a biblical standpoint.
Sure.
And justice is about wholeness. It's about whole people. It's about whole communities. It's about a whole planet. And justice, in a lot of ways, is the other side of the coin when we talk about shalom. And God's desire and plan is for us to have individual justice, community justice, justice in our cosmos. And it's this idea that Jesus is engaged in setting things right. And true justice is about things being set right. And so as I think about what we're going through, something's not right. And there's a work that we're being invited to engage in order to set things right.
Sure. And in light of that work that you just mentioned, so here at Calvary, we're going through our last series, little mini series in the book of Titus. And last week we talked about what it looks like to be gentle. This week we're talking about what it looks like to be peaceable. And when you kind of think of those characteristics in first glance, they appear to be weaker. They appear to be passive. On the other side of the coin, when we're trying to seek justice, or how our culture views justice, it seems like you have to be in this place of power or of influence. So how do we wrestle through that? How do we seek justice? How do we seek this wholeness and be a part of what God is doing when it appears that we're in a weaker state with being gentle and peaceable?
Yeah, it's interesting that we would associate peaceable and gentleness with weakness, because that's not what we see in Jesus. Jesus is described as meek and humble, words that often are seen as weakness, but he was anything but weak.
Sure.
And I think as we think about justice, it was the very mission of Jesus. I mean, he came to set things right. He came to for the kingdom to break through the darkness that plagues our culture.
Sure.
And Jesus, oftentimes said things and did things that was opposed to cultural values. It wasn't weak. in his prayer, in his teaching his disciples how to pray, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. That statement, Jesus smacks right up against the political system and declares that God's name is to be hallowed, when in a time, politically, Caesar's name was to be hallowed. And so we don't see Jesus being weak or even passive, which I think we've taken on these ideas and concepts. I'd also say that when we look at like Dr. Martin Luther King back in the 60s, he chose to take on a nonviolent approach to addressing the civil unrest and the injustices of our culture during that day. And much of that was based upon his study of Gandhi and his study of Jesus. And so I think part of our role in engaging in justice and being gentle and being peaceable is a reflection of who Jesus really is.
That's good. That's good. Very much kind of twisting how we've taken biblical stuff and then basically brought the culture into it and just kind of just twisted everything around.
Absolutely.
That's great. So kind of going back and kind of looking at 2020 as a whole. So the first 6 months have been crazy. I know we're dealing with the injustice of Christian Cooper and what happened there, the deaths of Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and now George Floyd. Even locally dealing with like the protests, the riots, and the looting that's been taking place. And like, let's not forget that we're still in the middle of a pandemic. Like we're still trying to navigate through COVID-19 and what this looks like. And in light of all these things currently going on now in our culture, how can we exhibit being gentle and being peaceable? Well, in all honesty, on whether it's COVID-19, whether it's the injustice going on in the world, you can find people on opposite ends on both spectrum. So how can we seek to be gentle and peaceable even in the times we're living in now?
Yeah. So I thought about this question. I think first we need to be slow to judge. It's very easy to judge and to determine what side of an issue you're going to be on, but we need to be slow to judge. We need to be quick to listen. Be quick to listen to someone else's opinion. Be quick to listen to what is going on. Be quick to hear the experiences of others, and which I think the church has a hard time doing. We come up quickly with our own ways of responding to things, and we don't take enough time to listen to another person's experience and to listen to what their journey has been to try to understand. I think we need to be eager to learn. Just like we research other things, Google is our friend. We need to be eager to learn. Like, what are the real conditions and situations people of color are experiencing and going through? What information is out there that may be different from my political ideology or may come from a different persuasion in terms of how I think? How can I be eager to learn what the experience people have had? There are a couple of great resources. City Within a City speaks about the conditions and the realities of Black people here in Grand Rapids. That's a localized resource that's available. The Sin of Racism is a book that I think is powerful and speaks to the historical realities that people of color have experienced in our country. So we have to be eager to learn. We also have to be willing to identify with. Calvary is my family. And although I am a person of African American descent, there are a number of people in our family who are not African American, from all nations. The scripture says, and if I see you as family and understand that you are an extension of my family, then I have to be willing to identify with you.
Right.
And I have to be willing to listen to you and learn together. And so being willing to identify with the struggles and the difficulties of other people. And then finally, be ready to speak up. Be ready to speak up. Be ready to give a voice to those who are voiceless. And be ready to take action. So again, this peaceable idea and this idea of being gentle calls us to action, not necessarily passivity.
That's good. That's good. And thinking of being gentle and thinking of being peaceable, you know, it's kind of easy and almost in a sense a fad to do that now in times of crisis. But we're seeking to be gentle, we're seeking to be peaceful, not just today, not just during COVID-19, not during just periods of injustice, but in every single day of our lives. You know, we're really seeking to be image bearers and seeking to see effective change, not just today, but in the future. These are characteristics we should take on now and live into the very future.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to know what you are personally doing, what Tabernacle Community Church is doing to be peaceable, to be gentle daily, and what type of fruit and what type of change have you seen, whether that's inwardly or outwardly, in response to that?
So I think so there's kind of several ways to answer this particular question. I think as a ministry, one of the things that we have focused in on as our mission is just kind of two key words. It's influence and impact. How do we influence the culture? How do we impact the city? And what does it mean to become the just ones? The Sadakim. There's this Hebrew word that represents this idea of justice, this idea of being the just ones, the righteous ones. And so what does it mean to be that? And beginning to see people at Tabernacle look at a variety of ways, looking at their workspaces and asking the question, how has God called me and placed me in the realm of influence that he's given me to be the Sadakim, to be the just ones? And as you understand and unpack that word, this idea of justice is an individual who is willing to disadvantage themselves for the advantage of another. And so as people have grabbed a hold of that, I'm hearing stories of people who are excited about opportunities that they're finding in their lives to be able to disadvantage themselves for the advantage of someone else, whether that's in their personal finance or in their positions of power. They're looking at ways in their lives that they can actually say no to themselves and say yes to the kingdom in a way that influences and impacts others. We're also involved in a nonprofit, our nonprofit, the Grand Rapids Nehemiah Project. Its entire work is around rebuilding and restoring the city. And we see ourselves being sent by God to do that, to join in that work. So we don't see ourselves as the end all be all, but we're just simply coming alongside as a body of people to join in the work that Jesus is already doing in the world, in our city in particular, and engaging in this whole vision to help all people flourish. Because the reality is here in Grand Rapids, there's a lot of people flourishing, but there's a whole community of people who aren't flourishing. And so we have identified the 49507 zip code, looking at ways to partner with others. This is, I think, is probably one of the most interesting and applicable ways that we're being gentle and peaceable is that we're partnering with others. Again, not seeing ourselves as the end all be all, but joining in with others. The NAACP, Bethany Christian Services, the social enterprises of the nonprofit, Building Bridges Professional Services, and Rising Grinds Cafe, looking at these partnerships as ways to impact the planet, ways to impact people, impact purpose, and to impact profit. And those are 4 ways that we're seeing influence and impact and movement happening in our realm of influence.
Wow, that's awesome. So what encouragement do you have for us as Calvary Church, as a localized body, as we seek now and into the future to be gentle and to be peaceful, not just during a time of crisis, but just making this a daily part of our lives?
Yeah, so I wanted to just say those things again. Slow to judge, quick to listen,
Sure.
eager to learn, willing to identify,
Yeah.
and ready to speak up.
Good.
I think those are some practical ways. But in addition to that, there's a passage in Jeremiah 29 that has really revolutionized my own thinking. And the prophet says to Israel, says to the people of God, God has placed you where he's placed you. He's put you in exile. You are where you are because of the purposes of God. It is intentional that you are where you are. Seek the peace and the prosperity of the city. Seek the shalom, seek the peace, be peaceable, is what he's saying, to seek the peace and the prosperity of the city. And that would be my encouragement, that wherever you find yourself, you are in that place of influence, you're in that place of power, you're in that place of being able to impact change. And I believe that God is calling us now, more than ever, to join him in the work of justice, to join him in the work of renewal in our city, because it's more than just saving souls. And when the church takes the lead and began to show a culture that you can impact, influence, and change in a way that is peaceable and that is gentle, what greater way can we point to Jesus than being able to do that?
Right.
What greater way is it a witness to who Jesus is? In a culture where people are attempting to bring about justice through violence, the church has an opportunity to bring about justice in ways that are peaceable and gentle. And that truly magnifies who Jesus is. It is in that moment that we show forth our good deeds and glorify our Father, which is in heaven.
Wow. 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 So I feel incredibly encouraged. I feel challenged, but even yet convicted to go about and to be this active presence now. So I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for your words. They've been very instrumental to us. And hopefully to our Calvary community, they were likewise instrumental as well. Calvary, God bless you guys. I hope this was also an encouragement, also challenging, and maybe even convicting at times. But I pray that we seek to live forward now, not just in time of pandemic and in injustice, but we seek to daily live out the reality of being gentle and being peaceable in our society. God bless you, Calvary.
God bless you. Thank you.
Yep.